How did a hardworking, successful daughter end up becoming the family's endless wallet for years, without anyone thinking it was unfair? How did I, the person who paid nearly a fifth of the value of our family's vacation home, end up being seen as the default responsible one? And how, after all those years of carrying the weight, did I still believe I was loved? It wasn't until that one fateful evening that I finally understood. Family ties can be the sweetest excuse to cover the ugliest imbalances. I'm Amelia Lawrence, 34 years old, living in Boise, Idaho, and this is my story. I didn't grow up in a wealthy household, but my parents, Mark and Susan, always taught me that love mattered more than money. I believed that. So much so that when I started making money from freelance financial investing, I didn't think twice when my parents asked for help with a few small things. At first it was just a few $100s to cover the winter heating bill for our log cabin in Coeur d'Alene, the vacation house they bought 10 years ago and only visited during the holidays. Then it became a few thousand for the heating system repair. Then health insurance costs for Mom when her primary policy didn't cover medication after her knee surgery. I never tracked anything. I didn't feel the need. These were my parents. My family. I thought simply, they raised me, now it's my turn to give back. But that turn just kept going, year after year. When my younger sister Chloe graduated with a communications degree and couldn't find a job, Mom called me in the middle of the night. You know how hard it is to find work in Chloe's field. We're thinking of helping her start an online business. She just needs about $5,000, 0 cents for ads and equipment. I paused for a second, then agreed, like I always did. I don't hate Chloe. But every time she had a new idea, it meant I had to pull out my wallet. First it was a YouTube baking channel, then vintage clothing sales, and most recently life coaching. None of them lasted more than 8 months. And of course, who paid for the marketing, cameras, trial studio rentals? Me. Once, I said no and my mom broke down over the phone. Amelia, you're always okay. Chloe is more sensitive, not as strong as you. Without her sister, how could she possibly make it in this world? That was when I began to realize. I wasn't loved for being Amelia. I was loved for being the one who could take hits and shell out cash on cue. Not a daughter, but the family's financial plan B. Last year what stunned me wasn't how much I had spent, it was how natural it seemed to them. I received the property tax bill for the vacation home, $6,200 0 cents, along with a short text from Dad. Yours, like every year. No thank you, no are you doing okay? Just a silent command. I froze. I began listing every single thing I had paid for over the past 6 years. 6 seasons of property tax for the cabin. $37,200, 0 cents. Chloe's car, I made the payments she promised to repay, never did. 14,000. 0 cents. Roof repairs after the storm, $11,800. 0 cents. Medication and 4-day hospital stay for Mom, $6,900. 0 cents. 2 family holiday trips, flights, hotels, gifts. All under my name. $17,400. 0 cents. Total, $87,300. 0 cents. Almost the cost of a small home where I live. And that's not even counting the hours I spent handling their paperwork, paying late bills, submitting insurance premiums so Mom wouldn't lose coverage. I used to think of it as duty, as the responsibility of a grown daughter. But staring at the Excel spreadsheet on my screen, a strange feeling surged in my chest. Anger and hurt. I, who always showed up, always paid, always carried the burden, had become the only one in the family who wasn't allowed to be tired. No one had ever asked me, "Are you okay?" No one had ever said, "Thank you for doing that for all of us." They only said, "You've got time. You make more than Chloe. You're successful, you'll be fine." And I believed those words long enough to trap myself in a cycle of responsibility, where I was the only one paying the dues, but no one even saw me. I'm not writing this to complain. I'm writing this because it's finally time to face the one question I've avoided all these years. If I stopped paying, would they still consider me part of this family? Amelia, you are being unbelievably selfish right now. My father's voice hit me like a slap in the breezy living room of our vacation house in Coeur d'Alene. I stood frozen, still holding the $6,200.00 property tax bill he had just slid across the table. Like a slap to my face. Your sister is trying to rebuild her business after her last failure, and you make so much money, you should know how to share. I bit my lip. My heart pounded. Not from rage, but from pain. It was just a regular Sunday afternoon. Just a simple family meal. Or so I thought. Turns out, it was a surprise trial. And I was the defendant. Dad, I've been paying for this house for 6 years. The taxes, roof repairs, winter utilities. I paid for Mom's hospital bills. And Chloe? I bought her a car. Because you can, he snapped, slamming his hand on the table. When your family needs you, you help. Chloe needs money to start over, and you're just sitting on yours? I felt like I was being crushed. I had never felt so alone, in the presence of my own parents. My mom sat quietly on the couch, staring at her hands, avoiding eye contact. She didn't defend me, didn't interrupt. And that silence hurt more than the yelling. I placed the bill back on the table and was about to leave when my eyes caught a pale yellow envelope, tucked under a copy of Forbes. A corner of white paper peeked out, stamped with bold letters that made my heart stop. Chloe Lawrence, Trust Agreement. I didn't think. I grabbed it before anyone could react. Amelia, that's private. Put it down right now, Dad shouted, stepping toward me. But I had already opened it. And within the first few lines my hands began to tremble. It confirmed, a trust fund worth $320,000.00 had been set up by my father, exclusively for Chloe. With an addendum, it would be funded annually, with $10.00 from his private investment portfolio, until she turned 40. It felt like a knife through the heart, signed by my own father. My voice cracked. A trust fund? For Chloe? Dad snatched the papers and hid them behind his back. You weren't supposed to know about that. When I needed money for college, you said we couldn't afford it. I worked nearly 40 hours a week while studying just to pay for rent and books. But Chloe, she went to a private university, lived in fancy dorms, had a car. And now she gets a trust? My mother clenched her fists, still silent. My father looked at me like I had done something wrong. You're strong. You don't need help, Chloe does, she needs us. No, Dad. I'd managed on my own because I had no other choice. You pushed me to the edge while Chloe was always caught before she fell. I felt a tightness in my throat. Not from anger, but from shock. I remembered when I was 25 and my only car broke down in the middle of winter. I had to walk to work in ankle-deep snow. I asked to borrow just a few $100s to fix it. Dad said no. Said, finances are tight right now. Tight? Or was it all going to Chloe? I collapsed onto a chair, staring out the window where the orange glow of sunset washed over the lake. As kids, Chloe and I used to sit here eating ice cream, dreaming of big futures. I never imagined that one day, I'd be the one left behind in the house we once called home. I don't want to fight for anything, I whispered. But I can't keep living like an ATM for this family, while being treated like I'm invisible. My dad lowered his voice, but didn't look at me. That's how your mother and I chose to protect Chloe. And who protected me, Dad? No one answered. I stood up. No more tears, just a heavy silence that hung in the air, like all the oxygen had been sucked out of the room. I'll handle the taxes this year, I said, my voice ice cold. One last time. My dad nodded, as if I'd just done the right thing. But he didn't realize. That nod would be the last time he saw me as someone he could control. I left the house, the cold air hitting my face like a slap back to reality. On the entire drive back to Salt Lake City, I didn't play music. Didn't cry. Didn't call anyone. I thought about one thing. How injustice was sugar-coated under the label of family. Amelia would no longer be the fool standing in the shadows. I used to try not to dwell on the past. I told myself maybe my parents were struggling back then. That every child has their own path. That the difference in treatment was just timing, circumstance, maybe a shift in finances. But when I read the words, trust fund for Chloe only, every excuse I'd ever told myself collapsed like a cruel joke. I began to remember. Not in a romanticized way, but in a raw, painful truth. I remembered the day I got my partial scholarship to Idaho State University. I jumped up in joy, hugged my mom, and asked, "Mom, can we manage the rest of the tuition? It's just about $9,000 a year. I promise I'll work part-time to help." She squeezed my hands and sighed. "Sweetheart, money's tight right now. We don't want you in debt, but you're resourceful. You'll figure it out." I didn't get angry, I believed her. So much so that I worked as a barista 6 days a week near campus. Classes in the morning, work in the afternoon, homework late at night. There were nights I fell asleep on my textbooks with the scent of coffee still clinging to my hair. Meanwhile, Chloe, she got accepted to a private school in California, double my tuition, and not a word of hesitation. My parents flew her out for orientation, rented her a studio apartment near campus, and gifted her a brand new Subaru Forester for graduation. I asked Mom, "Back when I was in college, you said we didn't have enough money." She just smiled. "Chloe's different, she's more fragile, you're strong, you can handle anything." I laughed, a bitter laugh that burned in my throat. Strong. That word followed me like a shackle my entire life. I was strong, so I had to give up the good stuff for her. I was strong, so I wasn't allowed to complain when Chloe threw tantrums. I was strong, so I didn't need new toys or birthday parties or even encouragement. I was strong, so I had to carry it all. When Chloe cried over failing math, Mom hired a tutor. When I aced the state math exam, she just said, "Well, we knew you could do it." I used to think a compliment is enough. Until I realized, praise doesn't pay for medicine. Praise doesn't cover rent. Praise doesn't fill the gas tank. Chloe didn't have to be strong. She just had to look helpless at the right time, and the world would lay itself at her feet. I remembered that one winter evening when I was 17. I asked to go to prom with my friends, the only time I ever wanted to feel like a princess. I found a discounted dress. Second-hand but perfect. $90. I came home and asked Dad, "Can I buy it? I'll pay for half from my part-time job." He lowered his newspaper, didn't look at me and said, "There's no money for frivolous things, Amelia. You should focus on your future." A month later, Chloe got her hair done at a salon, her nails too, a designer dress and even a rented limousine. For her 9th grade formal. 9th grade. I wasn't jealous. But I was heartbroken. I kept wondering, was I ever truly loved, or was I just the model daughter used to guilt Chloe into being good enough? I don't blame Chloe. She grew up in a world where everything was handed to her, and believed that was normal. She doesn't know what it's like to ask permission just to buy a favorite book, or work late shifts while studying over instant noodles. I blame my mother's silence. I blame my father's harsh eyes that saw me not as a daughter, but as an investment. Last week, I texted Mom about Chloe's trust fund. She replied, "Honey, that's just your father's way of preparing for her future. She needs stability. You already have it." "Already have it?" I typed back. "Because of who?" She didn't respond. I stayed up all night that night. The memories came crashing back like a storm, destroying the last shred of belief I had in the idea of a fair family. The next day I opened my laptop and created a new folder. Evidence, family contributions. If they saw me as the only one responsible for holding this family together, then it was time. They looked at every dollar I'd withdrawn for them. And this time I wouldn't stay silent. I would no longer let my competence be the excuse they used to pile all the responsibilities, ones that should have been shared, onto my shoulders. I never thought I'd one day have to build a financial case against my own family. That morning I woke up with two conflicting emotions. Relief for finally speaking the truth, and heartbreak because that very truth had pushed me even further away from my parents. But when I checked my phone, the message from my father erased any remaining doubt. Have you changed your mind yet? The property tax is due next week. I trust you won't let the family down. No apology, no mention of the trust fund. Just more demands, as if everything I'd done over the years was simply expected. I took a deep breath, sat down at my desk, and reopened the folder, Family Contributions, I had started the night before. I pulled up every email with a bank transfer confirmation, every credit card statement, every vague thank you text my mom had ever sent, messages like, "Thanks. This month's a bit easier now. No, we'll pay you back. No, let's split it." Just me, and the unnamed responsibilities they kept handing over. I spent the entire day tallying everything up. A long list, detailed like one of my investment strategy sheets. Total, $87,300. But I knew there was more. Small expenses like plumbing repairs, emergency money transfers for Chloe when she overspent a little, paying the utility bills when my parents were waiting on an investment to come through. After 2 days of non-stop work, I brought the entire file to the person I trusted most with finances. Jacob Grant, my investment advisor since the day I started earning big from the stock market. Jacob's office was on the 17th floor, a modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Boise Mountains. I placed the thick file on the desk without a word. Jacob looked at me for a moment, then put on his reading glasses. He flipped through every page, silent. At the summary sheet, he paused. "Amelia, over $87,000? You never mentioned any of this." I gave a dry laugh. "Because I thought, it's just something you do, it's family, right?" Jacob didn't laugh. He set the file down and removed his glasses. "I don't want to sound cold, but you're depleting your financial future. This isn't helping anymore. It's financial abuse within the family." I swallowed hard. Even though I'd said it to myself 1,000 times, hearing someone else, especially a professional like Jacob, say it aloud still stung. "I want to refer you to someone," Jacob said. "Victor Hernandez. He's a forensic accountant who specializes in family finance disputes. He's good. And discreet." I nodded. "I don't want to sue anyone. At least not yet. I just need a clean record. So if anyone ever calls me selfish again, I can show them exactly what that word cost me." 3 days later, I had my first meeting with Victor. A Latino man in his 50s, deep voice, sharp eyes that felt like they could read my thoughts. He examined the documents I brought like a doctor reviewing a CT scan. "I have to say, your file is extremely detailed. Not many people keep documentation this precise." "I work in finance, it's a habit," I replied. Victor nodded. "We'll need to create a full ledger with third-party verification. I'll also calculate the investment returns you lost by withdrawing funds at the wrong times." Return? If you hadn't spent that money on your family and instead reinvested it based on your prior stock portfolio, we're looking at a missed gain of at least $13,800. Could go up to $16,000, factoring in compound interest. I was stunned. Nearly $100,000 gone. And in return? A house I didn't own. A car I never drove. Thanksgiving dinners I paid for, but was never mentioned in the toast. Victor looked at me, voice softening. "You're trying to save everyone else while you're the one being left behind. Do you want to pursue legal action?" I shook my head. "Not yet. But I want everything in my hands, so that next time, I don't feel scared." He nodded. "Then let's get started." I left Victor's office feeling like I'd just woken up from a 6-year trance. In my hand was the first step toward clarity. And I knew starting now, my family would no longer see me as a walking wallet. That night, after returning from Victor's office, I sat in my small apartment. The glow from neighboring buildings reflected on my window. I hadn't turned the lights on. In the soft darkness, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. A quiet, haunting certainty. I was done. Not angry. Not vengeful. Just finished. The next morning, I opened my laptop and logged into all my payment accounts. My hands didn't shake like I thought they would. I removed my credit card from the vacation home's utility bill account in Coeur d'Alene. I canceled the automatic transfer for Chloe's car loan, a payment I had been covering for 2 years, clinging to the naive hope that she'll pay me back eventually. I called the bank and asked to be removed as co-signer from the family credit card, the same account where I was always the first one called when it was overdue. And finally, I transferred $95,000 from my main trading fund to a brand new investment account titled Amelia's Future. No more family. No more support. Just me, and what I deserve. My phone started buzzing non-stop around noon. The first message was from Chloe. "Did you forget this month's payment? The bank says the car's past due." I read it. But I didn't reply. 15 minutes later it was my father. "Amelia, what's going on? I haven't seen confirmation for the property tax payment. Your sister also mentioned something about her car. What are you doing?" I still said nothing. By evening my phone was vibrating so much I had to turn off notifications completely. When I turned it back on, the message inbox was flooded with blame, accusations, even subtle threats like, "Can the family not count on you anymore?" But not a single person asked, "What happened that made you change so drastically?" They didn't care about the reason. They only cared about the cash flow. I sat down at the dining table, set my phone aside, and started typing a single email. Simple, concise and cold. From Amelia Lawrence to Mark and Susan Lawrence. Subject: regarding financial contributions. Dear Mom and Dad, I'm writing this email to inform you that, effective immediately, I will no longer be responsible for any financial obligations related to the family. This includes but is not limited to property tax, maintenance bills, Chloe's car payments, or shared holiday expenses. I have also removed myself from any accounts linked to my bank cards or credit information. This is not a spontaneous decision. After compiling all financial contributions over the past 6 years, verified by a forensic accountant, I have determined that I've contributed over $98,000 without any form of support or acknowledgement from the family. I am not doing this to reclaim money. I am doing this to reclaim boundaries and respect. If you need to discuss further, please contact me via email. I will not respond to any calls or text messages regarding financial matters from this point forward. Wishing you well. Amelia. I hit send and turned off my Wi-Fi. That night I slept surprisingly soundly. No dreams, no tossing and turning. The next morning my phone rang while I was having breakfast. Caller, Chloe. I let it ring until it stopped. Then I went back to my oatmeal. An hour later, a flood of messages from Chloe arrived. "Are you insane? I might not have a car to get to work. Who do you think you are, cutting everyone off like this? The whole family's freaking out. Mom and Dad said if you don't pay the property tax this year they could get penalized. You're really going to let that happen?" I took screenshots of everything and saved them into a new folder. Boundary violations. Just to remind myself. This isn't me overreacting. This is me protecting myself. By the afternoon my father called. This time he left a voicemail. "Amelia, I don't understand why you're acting this way. You've always helped for years. And now, over some misunderstanding about money, you're turning your back on the whole family? This is childish. I expect you to call me back, immediately." I leaned back in my chair and played the recording again. Not a single word of sorry. Not even a thank you. Only expectation. I forwarded the message to Jacob, then called him. "Good job, Amelia," he said. "But you should be mentally prepared. When you stop feeding the system fights back." I nodded. "They can say whatever they want. But this time, I'm not going back. And just like Jacob warned, the storm came the very next day. I never liked large family gatherings. They were noisy, repetitive, and most of the time I felt like an outsider. But this time was different. This time, I was the main topic. And I was no longer afraid. A message came Thursday from my uncle, Jonathan Lawrence, my father's younger brother. Your dad invited everyone over Saturday evening, said it's to clear up the misunderstanding. Heard you're not helping anymore. What's going on? I replied simply, I'll be there Saturday evening. And I'll explain everything. I arrived at my parents' house in Twin Falls at exactly 6 p.m. In my hand was a leather case, full of documents. Ledgers from Victor, statements from my advisor Jacob, copies of transfers, receipts and screenshots of messages. I didn't come to reason. I came to expose a truth that had been buried for far too long. The living room was packed. Aunt Barbara, Uncle Ronald, Uncle Jonathan's family, and some cousins I hadn't seen since last Christmas were all there. Chloe sat beside Mom, her eyes avoiding mine. Dad stood by the fireplace, holding a whiskey glass, like he was presiding over a board meeting. As I entered, the room grew still. My dad cleared his throat. Good, you came, now we can talk like adults. I said nothing. I just placed the case on the table, opened it, and began pulling out each document, one by one, laying them neatly in front of me. White paper. Black ink. Truth as bright and sharp as fluorescent light. Before anyone makes judgments, I'd like to present a few things, I said, locking eyes with each person. This is a detailed breakdown of every expense I've covered for the family over the last 6 years. The total is $98,200. A wave of murmurs spread through the room. Uncle Ronald frowned. Wait, what? I nodded and laid out the first spreadsheet. Vacation home, property tax, $37,200. Roof repairs, $11,800. Chloe's car, $14,000. Mom's hospital bills, $6,900. 4 family holidays, $17,400. The rest includes maintenance, late bills, and emergency expenses. My father's face turned red. He cut in. Amelia, this is a private family matter, no need to air it out like this. I turned to him, voice calm as ice. Then what about the $320,000 trust fund you created for Chloe without telling anyone? Is that also a private matter? Or was it an intentional secret? The room went dead silent. My mom shrank back. Chloe froze, her face ghost white. Aunt Barbara asked slowly, What trust? I've never heard of this. I pulled out the final photocopied document and handed it to everyone. A copy of the trust agreement signed by my father, with Chloe's name on it, and annual renewal clauses. Uncle Jonathan stood up abruptly. Greg, is this true? You set up a private trust for Chloe without telling anyone? While letting Amelia cover all the expenses for the vacation house. My father gripped his glass tightly, face turning purple. I don't have to report to anyone. I'm the financial planner of this family. No, Dad. You're the biased planner, and I've been the unpaid sponsor for 6 years, I replied, eyes locked on his. The air in the room was thick. Uncle Ronald spoke up, voice heavy. Amelia, you really paid almost $100,000 and no one knew? I didn't brag because I thought it was the right thing to do. But when I'm exploited, called selfish, pushed to exhaustion and still told, Chloe needs it more, I can't stay silent anymore. Aunt Barbara sat up straight, turning to my mother. Susan, what do you think about all this? My mother looked at me, eyes bitter, but her voice as gentle as always. She's always been the strong one, and Chloe, she's more fragile. She needed a little more support. I clenched my voice. And what about me, Mom? When I needed money to fix my car in the middle of winter, you said, tough it out. When I worked 3 jobs during college, you said, you're smart, you'll manage. No one ever asked, are you tired? Do you need anything? No one answered. And I knew, for the first time, they were really listening. Uncle Jonathan placed a hand on my shoulder. "Thank you for speaking up. This isn't right. We can't let one person in the family carry all the weight just because they know how to stay quiet." I looked around the room, a room that used to make me feel invisible, and now, more than a few eyes were on me with something close to understanding. Not because they fully got it, but because they couldn't ignore the evidence. Finally, my father spoke. "What do you want, Amelia? You want your mother and me to pay you back?" I looked at him, cool and steady. "No, I don't want money, I want respect, and I want to end this role of family bank that you've cast me in." I packed up the documents and stood. Before leaving, I looked directly at Chloe, who hadn't said a word the entire time. "You don't need to apologize. But you do need to ask yourself, whose back have you been standing on? And do you really think that's fair?" She said nothing. And maybe for the first time in her life, Chloe had no excuse. 3 days after the family meeting, I received a message from an unknown number. Just one line. "Are you home? I need to talk, Chloe?" I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the reply button. For years, Chloe had only ever texted me things like, "Hey sis, can you help me?" or "Can you transfer some money?" I typed a short reply. "Come over, 30 minutes. Right on time the doorbell rang. I opened the door. Chloe stood there, holding a slim folder, eyes red, hair tied up hastily. No makeup, no silk dress, just a Chloe I barely recognized. I invited her in, didn't ask anything. She sat on the couch, looking around my small apartment like it was her first time seeing it. It took a few seconds before she spoke. "I read everything, every page you showed at the family meeting." I nodded, silent. At first I couldn't believe it. I knew you helped, but I didn't think it was that much. I didn't realize just how much I leaned on you. She pulled out a copy of a document from her folder. "I spoke with Dad's attorney. And I told him if he doesn't do it, I will." "Do what?" I asked, cautious. "Transfer 25% of the vacation house ownership to your name." I froze. A blankness echoed in my mind. Chloe continued, her voice calm but firm. "I used money from the trust to pay this year's property tax. I also covered the legal fees for the transfer. This is the draft contract. It'll be finalized this week if you agree to sign." I stared at the paper in front of me. The numbers, my name, Chloe's name, the faint stamp from the law firm. All of it real, so real it took my breath away. "Why?" I blurted out. "Why are you doing this?" Chloe looked at me. Her hazel eyes, eyes that used to draw all attention as a child, now truly looked red. Not from drama, not from manipulation, but from something real. "Because I can't pretend anymore," she said, voice catching. "For years I lived with the idea that I deserved support. I thought you were capable, independent, so you didn't need anything. I assumed that was a fair division." I didn't interrupt. For the first time, Chloe was taking responsibility. No mom stepping in. No dad shielding her. But after that meeting, everything collapsed. I saw myself as a leech. "And you should have had your name on that house from the beginning. I can't fix everything, but I can start here." The room seemed to pause. I took a breath and said slowly, "You don't owe me anything, Chloe. What I've wanted all these years wasn't the house, or a contract. It was fairness." "I know," she nodded. "But fairness can't exist unless the person who benefits gives something back. I'm not doing this to repay. I'm doing it to reset." I picked up the draft and flipped through it. Everything was legal, clear, and left me with one burning question. "Way now." As if reading my thoughts, Chloe added. "Dad didn't approve. He said this was betraying the family. But I told him straight. If he tries to pressure you again about the taxes, I'll publish all the documents you presented at the meeting. I'm done with his selective family loyalty." I laughed. A real laugh. Not bitter, not guarded. I looked at the little sister who once made me skip breakfast so she could have a prom dress. who once called me at midnight just to ask how to find cheap flights to Vegas. Now sitting in front of me, changed so much she was almost unrecognizable. I nodded. "Sign it, I'll sign the rest." Chloe handed me the pen. And just a few strokes later, I officially owned 25% of the house I had been paying taxes on for 6 years, without my name on a single deed. Until now. Chloe stood up, hesitating. "I'll go now. But if you ever need someone to just listen, I hope I get the chance to be that person." I said nothing, just gave a small nod. When the door closed behind her, I sat still for a long while. Not out of shock, but because for the first time in years, I felt seen. Not with praise, not with guilt, but with action. I thought that after meeting with Chloe and the ownership transfer, things would finally settle down. I could return to work, enjoy my own space, and leave all the old pain behind. But less than a week later I got a call from Uncle Jonathan. His voice was urgent. "Amelia, I saw Greg today. There's something you need to know." I stood up from my desk, a chill running down my spine. "What happened, Uncle?" "Chloe asked Greg to review the trust. She said if he didn't take action to correct it, she would get her lawyer involved and take it to the local press." I stayed silent, partly out of surprise, mostly because I never expected my little sister, the one who always lived in a pre-built safety net, to finally take a stand. "Greg is falling apart. He's angry, confused. But with pressure from you, from Chloe, from Aunt Barbara and me, he finally agreed to meet with his personal financial advisor. This week." I exhaled slowly. Not with joy, not with satisfaction. Just a heavy weight seemed to lift off my chest. 2 weeks passed without further updates. I tried to focus on the markets. Nasdaq was swinging hard, energy stocks were down, and I was following the analysis chain I'd been developing for the past month. Then one morning, at 9:12 a.m., I received an email. Sender, Lawrence Financial Advisory. Subject, Trust Fund Update, as directed by Mr. Gregory Lawrence. I opened the message, and for the first few seconds, I thought I was reading it wrong. "We are writing to inform you that, per Mr. Gregory Lawrence's latest directive, the current trust fund will be equally divided between 2 beneficiaries, Chloe Lawrence and Amelia Lawrence, each receiving 50% of the current and future distribution." I placed my hand over my chest, feeling my heart pounding. I read it again, and, again, it wasn't a mistake. No more for Chloe only. No more you don't need it. After all these years of sacrifice, silence, and shouldering the burden, I was finally named equally alongside my sister, in an asset that my father had once carefully directed in only one direction. At that moment my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "I know things can't go back to the way they were. But I want you to know, I'm proud of you and I'm sorry for not speaking up sooner." I sat down, didn't cry. I didn't need to. I simply reopened that old folder on my laptop, family contributions, and added a new file. Recognition PFP. Inside was the email I had just received. The first proof that I was no longer invisible. The next family meeting wasn't a confrontation anymore. It was a reconciliation. My father didn't say much. He simply announced the adjustment to the trust and confirmed that I was now officially listed as co-owner. No one clapped. No one cheered. But the looks, they were different. Uncle Jonathan smiled and nodded. Aunt Barbara gave my hand a quiet squeeze as she passed by. And Chloe? She sat beside me, silent, but her gaze was steady. My father looked at me for the first time in months, without blame in his eyes. "Maybe I was wrong, not because I didn't love you, but because I assumed you didn't need to be loved." I responded, not gently. "You weren't just wrong. You hurt a part of my youth. But the fact that you were willing to change is enough for me to close that chapter." He nodded, slowly. And for a man like him, that nod was deeper than any apology he could have said. A few months later, as I sat in my new apartment, paid for with a private investment from Amelia's future, I opened my quarterly financial report. My portfolio was steady. My retirement fund was growing. But what I valued most wasn't the numbers. It was the boundary I had set. The voice I had finally used. The recognition, late but clear and irreversible. I used to think I was just the shadow behind my sister. The silent credit card. The daughter who didn't need anything because she was too strong. But now, I am Amelia Lawrence. A woman who lives within her limits. Who protects her worth. And who, in the end, created her own justice with her own hands. Amelia's story isn't just about money. It's about self-worth, boundaries, and the courage to demand fairness, even if it comes late. In a world where strong people are often assumed to need nothing, she proved that silence is not a virtue. To speak up, to set boundaries, to say enough, is one of the most powerful forms of self-love. And sometimes, what we truly need isn't repayment, but recognition and real respect. What do you think about Amelia's decision? Was she too harsh? Or was it exactly what she needed to protect herself? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and life.